One stat that can help win or lose you your fantasy league, sometimes because of the variance, but steals. Steals and blocks, especially we'll get to blocks later, but steals are a huge part of fantasy basketball and roto and head to head. Who are some players you're targeting that have high steal upside?
So Jimmy Butler and Fred VanVleet were the two guys last year who are great contributors in other categories. Their steal rate is really what propels them to potential top 25 value, and I think they're both in that mix again this season. With Butler, you maybe have a couple more health concerns than you do with VanVleet, who's kind of right in the prime of his athletic career. Obviously, no Kyle Lowry in Toronto anymore, so a little more upside, I think, for Fred VanVleet. DeJounte Murray, another guard with a high steal rate, Drew Holiday in that category as well. In terms of end of the draft type of guys, not premier names, TJ McConnell, made a living last year with his all around production. He's a guy we should have mentioned in assists as well, but an incredibly high steal rate for a guy who doesn't play a lot of minutes.
The guy I always turn to when it comes to steals and blocks is Robert Covington.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, basically over the past 5 years, he's averaging, a steal and a half and a block. Someone who's always going to play over 30 minutes a game. He's going to take on the best wing defender on the other team. He's going to be in the passing lanes. So he's someone I trust a lot. Even on the same team, Larry Nance Jr.
Yeah.
1.7 steals in 31 minutes a game last season. Maybe he doesn't see quite that many minutes this year, but Portland is at least a place you can turn to when you need some steals targets.
Yeah, Nance is a great one. He's somebody I think I'm going to be targeting quite a bit. I think he landed in a really, really good spot. A couple other guys that bear mentioning, Tyrese Halliburton had a great steal rate as a rookie last year. That should only improve. DeLon Wright, always a guy who's at the top of the leaderboards in terms of steal rate. We'll see what his role is this season, kind of a wait and see situation with him. And Kevin Huerter, also, I mean, a guy who's kind of a steals and threes specialist in fantasy. He played around 30 minutes a game last year. I think it's possible that he matches that. He had great playoffs. His stock is up, but that team is really, really deep.
When you need blocks, you can usually find some blocks in the late rounds of fantasy drafts. A lot of teams just have centers who are out there sort of as defensive specialists. But when you need blocks in fantasy, who are you turning to?
There's some elite guys at the top. I mean, certainly Clint Capella, Rudy Gobert. We know the names there. I mean, I cannot recommend Nerlens Noel enough. I know the Noel Robinson split is not ideal. You have two guys who are elite per minute shot blockers and essentially split minutes. You kind of prefer that one of those guys just grab the job and play 35 minutes a game. And I mean, Nerlens Noel had the higher block rate last season. They re-signed Noel to a contract that I think is maybe a little more lucrative than it should have been. But if anything, that signals, I think, the faith that they have in these two as a tandem.
Yeah, Noel averaged 2.2 blocks in 24 minutes a game last season. You have to assume Noel sees 24 minutes a game again this season. And, at the beginning of the year, Mitchell Robinson is still missing time with a foot injury. So, Noel could be in line for 28, 29, 30 minutes a game. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Miles Turner, who averaged a league high 3.4 blocks per game last season. It's a second-time league in the league. Someone who also hits some threes. So he has upside to be like a top 30 player if he can even put together just a little bit more offense.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very obvious one that I missed when talking about the elite shot blockers in the league. I mean, with Turner, I feel like there's got to be some built-in regression, right? I mean, for a while he was on pace to average like 4.5 blocks a game, but still a fantastic shot blocking season. I mean, he midway through the year, if you had Miles Turner, you were essentially like guaranteed to win the blocks category. And of course, he got hurt as he always does. That's kind of the caveat with him. I mean, later in drafts, if you want to target someone like Jakob Poeltl, not a ton of upside, but a guy who, if you plucked him off the waiver wire after the LaMarcus Aldridge departure last year, I mean, he's going to kill you in free throws, although he doesn't take a ton. He rebounds okay. He scores okay, but a pretty reliable shot blocker and a guy who I think should return to a pretty reliable role in San Antonio this year. So he's kind of a end of the, maybe hundreds type of target, 100, 110 range. Robert Williams, of course, per minute is the new Mitchell Robinson. But we're seeing reports today that Al Horford could end up starting at center. I don't know that it ultimately matters all that much who gets the starting job. But the messaging is kind of clear at this point. Like when you go get Al Horford, you also go get Enes Kanter. Those of us who wish Robert Williams was going to play 25 to 30 minutes every single night, it just doesn't seem like that's going to be the plan for them.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to play it safe in your drafts and get both Robert Williams and Al Horford and kind of see what happens. There are similar situations around the league. You could try to get Noel and Mitchell Robinson. You could try to get Kem Birch and Chris Boucher, something like that.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.